How many innocents did you drain dry? Maybe we aren't so different after all.
Now, before we break down the story that we know so far and the lore of the Blood of Dawnwalker, it's important to understand the studio behind it, the masterminds behind this amazing tale, and why this game is drawing so much attention. The Blood of Dawnwalker is being developed by Rebel Wolves, a relatively new studio made up of industry veterans who previously worked at CD Projekt Red. Now, that includes Konrad Tomaskevich, who served as game director for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, one of the most critically acclaimed RPGs of all time. Many members of the team also worked on major expansions like Blood and Wine, which helped define the modern open world storytelling. After years of working on large-scale RPGs, the team at Rebel Wolves set out to build something of their own. Their goal was to take everything that they've learned from those narrative-driven experiences and push it even further, focusing on player choice and world building, a system that reacts to time and consequence in a more direct way. That vision led them to The Blood of Dawnwalker, a dark fantasy RPG set in a world where vampires have already won and humanity is forced to survive under their rule. Instead of building some traditional hero story, the team is focusing on a grounded, morally complex narrative. This game also carries a clear design DNA from the Witcher 3 era of CD Projekt Red. You can kind of see it in the tone, the fantasy setting, the focus on the characters, some of the clothes, some of the world. It just reminds me a lot of The Witcher 3. With all that in mind, Rebel Wolves has made it clear that they're not trying to repeat the past or replicate what worked back then. This is their opportunity to build a foundation and create something entirely new. And I think with that in mind, we can now step into the world of Vale Sangora and begin unpacking the story of Coen. The Blood of Dawnwalker is one of the most interesting RPGs releasing this year, and while we still have a few months before launch, Rebel Wolves has already revealed enough information to piece together the foundation of the story. The game takes place in Vale Sangora, a remote valley hidden within the Carpathian Mountains during an alternate version of 14th century Europe. This is a world that has been devastated by the Black Plague, war, and political collapse. Humanity now is struggling to survive, and something evil, something ancient comes out from the shadows. Vampires. Now, these vampires have spent centuries hiding from mankind, and they finally seize their opportunity and take control of the region. And under their rule, humans become resources. The vampire rulers impose a blood tax on the population, turning the people of Vale Sangora into a buffet of blood. Now, at the center of this story is a young man named Coen. Before the events of the game, Coen had lived a somewhat difficult but regular life. He worked in the silver mines alongside his father and helped support his family. Despite the hardships of mining life at the time, Coen dreamed of seeing the world beyond the valley. He was curious, he was ambitious, and he wanted something more from life. But responsibility kept him rooted in Vale Sangora. Everything would change, however, when tragedy would strike his family. The Black Death began to spread through their village. Lunka, his baby sister, became infected and would be condemned to die. However, Coen would try desperately to protect her from being executed, but he would fail. And before her execution would be carried out, the vampires would arrive. Specifically, the ancient vampire Lord Brencis and his undead followers. They wouldn't allow Lunka to die, and Brencis would force her to drink his blood. The results would obviously shock the village. Lunka would recover from the plague, and she would be saved from certain death. However, this miracle would come at a cost. Brencis would use this event to establish his authority over the village, forcing the population to submit to a new system of vampire rule. And in exchange for protection and survival, the villagers would provide their blood. And this is how they would incorporate this blood tax on Coen's village. Of course, a resistance would begin to brew, and Brencis' control would be challenged. The villagers would attempt to free themselves from the vampire's rule, and this would set off a nasty chain of events that would change Coen's life forever. During this conflict, Coen would be infected with the vampire curse, and he would be left for dead. However, his family would be taken away, and this moment would serve as the real beginning of the story according to developers. Now, the thing here to remember is that Coen doesn't actually fully transform into a vampire. He becomes something different, something new. He becomes a Dawnwalker. This is a being that is trapped between the two worlds. During the day, he remains basically human, able to walk among the regular people. But at night, his vampiric side awakens, and he is granted supernatural abilities and powers beyond those of a regular human. According to the lore released so far, years of exposure to silver in the mines may have prevented the transformation from fully completing on Coen, and this would result in him neither being a full vampire or a full human. This would be a condition that is very unique to him, and something that is expected to play a major role in obviously the gameplay and the story. Now, Coen would struggle to balance this humanity and the influence that he has of being a vampire. And I think this is a really interesting way to have a character kind of broken between two worlds, and I really like that. So as far as the main villain, Brencis, he is the antagonist of the game. He is an ancient and powerful vampire. He is also the ruler responsible for establishing vampire dominance throughout Vale Sangora. He was born into Roman nobility in AD 131. His original birth name was Caseo Burienus Laurentus. He was a senator who was poised for political greatness. However, his ascent up that ladder would end abruptly when he was turned into a vampire. This event shaped him and really condemned him to immortality, while also preserving his unrelenting desire for power. He would rename himself Brencis, and he would shift from the halls of Rome to the shadows of Vale Sangora, and eventually vie for power. What I find really interesting is that we are going really far in the past, and then we're going to the medieval, and then some other stuff potentially happening later. So this story of the Dawnwalker is massive and can explore so many different possibilities, which I personally fucking love. What makes Coen's journey more desperate is that he isn't fighting against Brencis in the traditional sense, right? He can't just, you don't just lead up to him in terms of the story. The time of the game is working against Coen. Rebel Wolves has revealed that the story takes place over a period of just 30 days and 30 nights. And from the moment Coen begins his quest, every decision that he takes pushes him forward and pushes the clock forward. Every mission, every encounter, every quest that he does is bringing the countdown of 30 days down. And for Coen, this means that his family's fate is hanging by a thread of 30 days and 30 nights. So somewhere within Vale Sangora, they are trapped under the control of Brencis and all of his vampires. Now, with each passing day, the chance of rescuing them grows a lot smaller. Coen cannot be everywhere at once, and he obviously can't save everyone either. So every choice comes with a dire consequence. It forces the player, and it forces Coen to decide what matters most to him and what sacrifice he's willing to make. The pressure of the 30 days will define, I think, the experience, and players are forced to deal with the consequences of their choices. And obviously, as the clock continues to go down, Coen is left with a massive question. Can he save his family before the 30 days are up, or will he transform into something much different and seek revenge rather than salvation? I mean, this is really cool and interesting because of the wording that the developers leave, right? They also kind of tease that after the 30 days, something happens if you don't do it. So I'm really interested to see how the story can unfold. And so far, this is kind of the setup of the story and the conflict of the Blood of Dawnwalker. And as you guys know, lore and stories is what drives me and this channel. And I was on the fence about getting Blood of Dawnwalker because I know it's a massive game and I didn't want too much on my plate in the month of September, but I can't pass this up, especially when it comes from Rebel Wolves, and with many of them coming from The Witcher 3, my favorite game of all time, I personally have to fucking support it. One thing that I do want to touch base on before we kind of wrap it up here is the future of the Dawnwalker, right? Some of the most fascinating things so far, or one of the most fascinating pieces of lore that have been revealed, is that the Blood of Dawnwalker is just the beginning. Rebel Wolves has described this game as the first chapter in the Dawnwalker Saga, and they revealed this trailer here.
Come in. The box, please. why.
Now, what is so cool about this, right? This hints at the fact that Coen's story is not going to end in Vale Sangora during the medieval setting of the 1300s or the 1400s. Because in the trailer, we see Coen in present time in 2026 or 2027, I don't know yet, right? And we see Coen receiving a package. And after this, someone comes for him and engages in some sort of fight with a mysterious character that we can't see. Now, the package itself is important because it's actually blood. We see that Coen digs in, takes out the blood, eats it, and he kind of gets powered up again. So something is going on that has Coen fighting, and he's maybe been in this constant state of fighting for centuries, and it follows him all the way to present day. So I think things get really interesting here because it opens up the door to endless possibilities, bigger possibilities, right, than just the medieval setting, just the time period that we see in the Blood of Dawnwalker. If this saga is successful and they continue to make games and things like that, and I honestly think that they will be, we could be dealing with a game that goes across multiple periods with each iteration. A medieval world in Vale Sangora would be the first game. The second game would be a modern day setting in 2027, 2028, 2029, whatever, around the time that the game maybe releases, or later, much later than that, I don't know. So that would be like the modern day setting of the second game. And then the third game could be like a futuristic setting, that takes place in I don't know, some cyberpunk type of deal. And maybe you see like flying cars and how that affects vampire. It's really, really cool to think of the possibilities that can happen with this story. And it gives Rebel Wolves, the developers, a lot of leeway and imagination to kind of let their minds wander and take us into this different time periods. I'm really, really excited. This is obviously 100% bigger than just one single game. This is kind of their introduction. This is their first hurrah into this massive world that they're building. I think something big to come out of this Saga's trailer also is who's coming for Coen in present day, right? Is it Brencis? Now, it looks like it couldn't be because maybe he has longer hair, just because of the look, but maybe it is Brencis, right? Has their conflict continued throughout the centuries? I think the idea of Coen and Brencis repeatedly clashing across different eras is one of the most interesting things that this game could do. There's also some similarities, I think, in terms of the vampire design in the Blood of Dawnwalker to the higher, being vampires in The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine. And I think that's really cool. And that kind of has my mind wonder, and it has my mind spinning in a good way because I can kind of create my own headcanon, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So I think that's just really cool. The possibilities are wild with the Blood of Dawnwalker, and I got a feeling this is going to be a really amazing game with a really amazing story. At the end of the day, though, what we did here today is kind of explore the story before we get the game, so we can kind of prepare ourselves and know this brand new world. This was something that I wanted to do for myself, and obviously something that I wanted to share with you guys, so I really hope you liked it. I personally think that the Blood of Dawnwalker has the potential to be one of the most ambitious RPGs we've seen in a really long time, especially when it comes to exploration and the lore of the world. So again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this breakdown and this story so far. If there's anything else you want to add, dive into, anything I missed, any corrections, like always, please let me know down in the comments. Let's have a conversation. And of course, once the game fully releases, we will be covering the full story and lore in massive detail.